Dobar dan, dober večer. Torej, dragi gostje, UNICEF-ovi prijatelji, podporniki, darovalci, lepo pozdravljeni. Res mi je v izjemno čast, da lahko v Sloveniji gostimo tako izjemnega človeka. Ishmael Beahom je bil nekoč otrok vojak in prav s pomočjo UNICEF-a in od UNICEF-ovih podpornikov, kot ste tudi mnogi med vami, je bil rešen in je dobil priložnost za drugo življenje, kot sam pravi. Danes je Ishmael velik zagovornik najbolj ranljivih otrok in UNICEF-ov ambasador. Jaz bi se, preden predam besedo Sekuju in Ishmaelu, rad zahvalil Muzeju novejše zgodovine, Bardo cateringu, Sixpacku, brez katerih ta dogodek ne bi bil možen. Radi pa sam še povedal, da tako kot je tudi že pisalo v vabilu, dogodek ni prevajan, je v angleškem jeziku. Zdaj pa Seku, Ishmael, seveda se opravičujem, najprej bi se doktor Širok prosil za par besed, direktorica muzeja.
Hvala, ojoj. Bom čisto kratka. Želim vam lep večer v imenu Muzeja novejše zgodovine Slovenije. Zahvaljujem se UNICEF-u, da nas je pač izbral za današnji dogodek. Nadejam se, da bo izjemen, super in da je to začetek enega zelo lepega sodelovanja, ker mislim, da z našimi vsebinami in vsebinami, ki jih pokrivate in jih tudi mi zagovarjamo, lahko tudi skupaj delamo lepe zgodbe. Želim vam lep večer in hvala.
Good evening. I will continue in English, if it's okay. I guess it is. It's really funny, because Ishmael was born in 1980. I was born in 1980. I was born in May, so I am a bit older, so I could call him my little brother. If I were born in my father's country, being Guinea, and Ishmael being born in Sierra Leone, I could call him my neighbor. Knowing his story and what a story it is, and knowing that you like literature, I could just call him Ishmael, to make a reference to Moby Dick. I read the book. I was listening to maybe all the interviews you ever gave, and you always talk about being a child soldier. But before that, it was a child. And let me start this evening with knowing you, Ishmael, the child. There's a funny story about your father pretending to be blind, putting you on his back and asking you to guide him. How do you remember, your childhood before the war?
Well, thank you, and thank you to everyone for being here this evening. It's a pleasure to be in Slovenia, and I'm glad we're doing it in English because I don't speak Slovenian, so that's wonderful. Well, I had a remarkable early childhood. I grew up in the very small village in the southern part of Sierra Leone, and the idea of community was very strong at the time, where basically anybody who was older than you was responsible for you, for taking care of you, but also for disciplining you if you did something wrong, which I did not like, the second part of this, because I was a very inquisitive child. And my father really built that in me. And the story that you're talking about is that when I was very little, my father played this game with me, which I play with my children now. He will make me sit on his shoulder, and he will pretend that he was blind, and he would tell me to guide him with my words. And I would say, well, go straight. And he would say, well, what does straight means? I'm a blind man. I don't know what straight means. Can you tell me how I can do that? So in my very young mind, I would struggle to find the right words. And he would deliberately try to walk into a fire, and I'd be like, well, you're walking in the fire. And he was like, I'm a blind man. I don't know what a fire is. I don't know what it even... So I'll try to explain to him what a fire was, and try to, through my imagination, find a way. And in retrospect, it was perhaps the early beginning of my training as a writer without even knowing that would be the case. I was the second born in a family of 2 boys. My older brother and I grew up with our father, and my younger brother with my mother. And I had a wonderful time. We were kind of a strange family because at the time not many families were separated. So we became kind of the weird people in the community because my father had to learn how to cook, which also, as you know, in the African context, even now, but back in those days was strange for a man to cook, but he had to learn how to cook to feed us. And through his process of learning, we ate all the mistakes he made, the food that he made that was really bad. So we were the test case, so we were like, no. So sometimes so we had fun times, and my father also worked for this American mining company. And through this, we had access to go to the quarters and watch television and do funny things. I went swimming. I played football every chance I got. So this is a very beautiful life that I had as a child. And I also had my grandmother, who I went to see, who also was one of my early philosophers, who would tell me stories for everything that happened. If I did something wrong, instead of giving me a punishment, she would tell me a story and say, what do you think the lesson was? And I would say to her, why don't you just tell me? You're my grandmother. She said, no, you have to figure it out. So I had this competing, and lastly, when you start going to school, which my father was a great love of education, so he made us learn very early on how to read and write. And as soon as he knew how to read and write, he made us start to read Shakespeare, and in the school system as well. So then we would go to the village square and pretend that we were really adept in English by reciting Shakespeare, and my father would be very proud. So we would say, friends, countrymen, lend me your ears, I've come to bury Caesar. And everybody would clap. I don't think I even knew what that meant at the time. I knew what it sounded like, And so this was kind of like the simplicity and beauty of my life. I had no worries. I was not, my life was beautiful in all aspects of it, really.
You had no worries, but you had dreams. What were you dreaming of, I don't know, becoming? Actor, Shakespearean? I know you wanted to become rapper also.
Yeah, I was interested in American hip hop because we saw it on the television, the Kool and the Gang, the Sugar Hill Gang, and all this, all the Rappers Delight, and all this kind of stuff. But my father was not a big fan. He thought that would spoil our perfect British English. That this American English was not sophisticated enough. He would really get upset. But we still pursued it. We would do the MC Hammer dancing. We had our hair, with the lines in it. We would do the Running Man. So we were doing that on the side. But my father really wanted me particularly to become an economist. And that was his dream for me, and I also embraced that dream, even though I knew that I would not be an economist. I knew deep down because I was not very good at math, which I think is very essential if you want to be an economist. So I got by, I got okay grades in math, but I knew at some point I would have to give it up. I loved reading and I loved writing. But I couldn't really say to my father that I wanted to pursue that. Most African parents, you can't tell them you want to be a writer. They will take you out of school and say, this one is not serious for his life, But the early practice that I had also was that I started writing letters as a child for my community. A good number of the adults were not literate in the sense of going to school. They were very intelligent, but so when their sons and daughters who were in the capital would send letters, I was one of the kids in the village who would read it to them. And then they would also ask me to respond. So it was not just parents, it was also between lovers, so I knew the secret of the community really well, because I was this person who would read and write. And I realized that some people would give me lunch money, and the ones who gave me the higher lunch money were the ones who had told me secrets they wanted me to keep. So I always thought to myself, wow, okay, I don't know what an economist earns, but I haven't even pursued this writing business. I'm already making lunch money out of it in my village. So I always thought, hey, something is interesting in that area.
Maybe you could become a hedge fund manager. They have a lot of secrets also.
I could in this day and age, certainly.
You mentioned community, society a lot. How was, society of your childhood in Sierra Leone different from the society that became after the war? What are your memories of the community, of bonds between people in your childhood?
As I said, my childhood was very ideal in the sense that, I grew up in one village, and my grandmother's village was about 12 miles from my village. And I would walk by myself as a child, age of 7, 8, 9, without anybody. All the way I would not fear anything. If night came upon me, I would sleep in the next village, and they would send word that I was there and everything was fine. This was kind of the mentality. We looked after each other. If a stranger came through the town who wasn't part of the community, people would give up all their food to feed. So there was a very strong sense of taking care of each other. Nobody was going hungry, We ate together. So you didn't know who didn't have or didn't. In the community, all the boys would eat together, and all the men would eat together, and the women would eat together. So if your family didn't have any food, nobody would ever know. So this is how I grew up. That sense that I am because you are, and you are because I am, was very much part of our community. Even to the point of harvesting and making farms, people help each other. Even as a kid, I remember, even the way land was given was based on family size. So every year for planting, they will give land to different people. But if you came to the town, the village would sit together, and the chief would allocate land for somebody to build a house, and everybody would help to build a house for the newcomer in the community. I grew up seeing these things. So, it was just, I couldn't think anything else was possible. This is not to say there were not things going on in our community. Obviously, there were things going on. There were fights from time to time, but there was never any kind of significant violence that really shocked anyone at all, It was just very easy. I went everywhere. I was never afraid of anything. I slept peacefully, And the only things that I worried about was that I would fall off a mango tree when I was trying to get one, a few times, and I would lip around a bit. But, everything was quite ideal.
And then rap. You said your father wanted you to become economist, but you wanted to pursue a career in rap music. You and your friends actually created a rap band or something. I don't know anything about rap. Let me clarify that now. But you wanted to rap.
Yes, I wanted, for me, the trigger for that was that, I obviously looked up to my older brother. And so my older brother had left to go to secondary school in a slightly bigger city. And so when he returned, I'm sure everybody knows back in the days when you have cassette tapes, right? Cassettes now. Sometimes when I say kids don't know what that is anymore, it makes me feel like I'm old, but I'm not really that old. But so he brought these cassette tapes with like Run DMC and LL Cool J, and we'll listen to it. And I was really impressed with how fast this guy could speak in English, and how they will make these sentences. And also it was back in the day when a majority of rappers, not today, at least in the United States, actually had something to say. They actually had lyrics that were poetry driven, they were well read, they talked about real things, And so I was drawn to that form of expression. So I started thinking, hey, we could do this. So my older brother and a few others, we formed this group, and we'll go around, and other kids did the same thing and engage in competitions of freestyling, of dancing, of all these things, you know. And of course, my father didn't know. Sometimes he knew and he would get upset, but he realized he couldn't really do anything about it. So I really wanted to pursue that because I thought this was a great way to express myself and to learn more the English language. I will even read a dictionary so I can get new words. So I'll be able to rhyme certain things, you know. So it was quite nice for me, yeah.
Maybe our friend is also looking through dictionaries to find his words. I guess you didn't have his cassettes. I don't even know if he made any cassettes, but Six-Pack Čukur, how American that sounds, is here with us. He's a rapper.
I heard you. You still have
You
something
heard
to
me?
say? Okay.
Zdaj bom presedlal na slovenščino. Six-Pack Čukur je raper, ki ima rad napoved zase, da je keramičar na parketu.
Bi te malo popravil. Najboljši keramičar med reperji, pa najboljši reper med keramičarji. In English, the best tile layer in rap category and the best rapper from tile layer category. You know what I mean? Ceramic tile layer. It's a joke, but actually it's not a joke. Anyway. Evo, dobro večer, še z moje strani, da me velik aplauz za Ishmaela in ekipo, da smo se danes tu zbrali. Hej, 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 ko pridem v Ljubljano pa pogledam, ven čez okno, dežuje, ko pogledam v ekran, še huje, da mi en lep dan, en normalen program, vse to mi je tuje, ko pogledam ven čez okno, dežuje, ko pogledam v live, še huje, da mi en lep dan, ej, da sonce spet tuje, dej mi en lep dan, ene lepe novice, na 24 uri dnevniku pravijo vice, moj kupo patrije, pa je dobil popust, v parlamentu se ne kregajo, šli so na dopust, dej mi en dan brez tajkunov, en dan brez tajfunov, da grem mirno, popir v štarcuno, da ne pada toča, da ne dvigajo se strehe, da ni ene nesreče na slovenskih cestah, na svetovnih vodah, v svetovnih gorah, da reševalci in policaji ostanejo doma, mi pa vsi v zuni, hej, klubi so puni, družba je zbrana, happy hour ob vsaki uri, muska je prava, sami old school komadi, inflacije ni, pijače, cene kolani, dej mi en dan, da vrne se moj stari, en dan pa naj takrat se cajt mi ustavi, ko pogledam ven čez okno, dežuje, daj meni velik aplaus, po dolgem cajtu na mikrofonu, my man Ishmael on the mic, hej! Mi je tuje, ko pogledam ven čez okno, dežuje, ko pogledamo live, hej, še huje, daj mi en lep dan, come on, here we go.
One beautiful day, blow the clouds away, let my spirit soar above the clouds, so I can be away from all the things that cause me dismay. Yes, if I struggle, I will rise above again, cause my spirit is strong. I come from resilience, the essence of my spirit is to build humanity. And together, for all the children suffering around the world, I give you offering of my voice so we can move fast. All the beautiful things, and see the clouds shine through the rains again, never rain. Yeah, since arriving Slovenia, it's been raining. I hope tomorrow there will be a sun shining. Beautiful man, Six-Pack Čukur, thank you for giving me this place to build my rhymes together with you. 1, 2, yes, yes, yeah, 1, 2, 1.
Ko pogledam ven čez okno, dežuje, ko pogledam v ekran,
His words,
daj mi en lep dan,
only one beautiful.
yeah, so mi je tuje, ko
When I look out the window, it's raining. When I look outside, even worse, one beautiful day, one beautiful day. Let the sun shine again.
When you look out the window,
Let the sun shine.
look out the window,
It's raining.
look out the window.
It's even worse.
My man Ishmael in the house. Hvala, v čast.
This is now a beginning of a completely new career.
I know. I would always say I started in Slovenia, in Ljubljani. And it was because of my man Six-Pack there. So, but I want to say, I read the lyrics of his songs, and I wanted to reiterate that he's one of those rappers out there that actually rap about something, that makes sense, These days, it's quite hard to find people who really do that. So, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to. I know the song is it's a very personal and beautiful song. Thank you for allowing me to take a verse. I appreciate it. Thank you. Man. Thank you.
And then the war came and ripped out everything you knew. How do you remember that day?
Well, I think to give you a little bit of context, there was a war that started in Liberia, which is another next door country, like Guinea. It's all the same. And prior to the war starting in Sierra Leone, we started seeing people coming from Liberia, and they would tell us what had happened to them. And our responses and the responses of people in our community was that would never happen. Yeah, look at how we live. It's impossible that we could be like them. And then the war started in the eastern part of Sierra Leone. And when people came running to the south, we said the same thing. Oh, this will never happen here. Our village is beautiful. We love each other. We're nice. And then the war started. Reached my village. I had gone to a talent show in the next town. And we started seeing a group of people running, in distress. And it was the first time in my life, I think there are a few moments that really stayed with me as we tried to go against the tide of people to return home to see if we can find our families. With a group of kids I was in the dance group with, we saw a few things. One was just helplessness. The first time in my life I saw a grown man, as you know, an African grown man never cries. To see one weeping helplessly really shook me as a boy. I thought something was wrong. But as we started walking, another image that even was more disturbing than that, there was this woman, back home, when women want to walk, they have this thing called a wrapper that they tie their children around so that their hands would be free. And she had tied her child around as she was running from the war. And she stopped at where we were, sort of standing by, watching people run away from this war, and she removed the child, and it was a little girl, and the child had been shot, and the only reason the mother was alive was because she had the child on her back. And I just remembered the pain on this woman's face, and the child had been smiling, so you could see an interrupted smile on her face, and that really shook me. I realized if that could happen to her, then our lives. Now you have to imagine I went from this idyllic place to this immediately happening, so you just cannot believe it, And from that day on, there was more and more of these things. So the path that I used to walk on, would not be afraid, became littered with bodies. The rivers were now bodies floating, lots of blood on the water. Sometimes you even have to part it to find the water. So the landscape changed to the point that even you couldn't hear the birds singing anymore. Even nature was afraid. So it was very hard because there was nobody to explain to you what was going on. So you just have to continue running for your life. So you begin to make decisions as an adult immediately, which you're not equipped to do, but somehow you have to in order to live. So that was really the first day that war truly entered my life.
And you probably don't have a lot of time to think about what is actually happening. You're just running to survive.
Absolutely, and you don't have time. Other people also don't understand what is going on, and so you just continue running every day, trying to figure it out. You live life every minute. You stop thinking, could I be an economist? You think, can I survive the next minute? And if possible, could I survive the next? And basically that became the journey that I was taking, running constantly every day. If you hear gunshots this way, you go that way. Now again, to give you context, I hadn't left my village. This was the first time that I had to actually leave the area that I grew up in and venture into the entirety of my country. So it's not like I had, I don't know, Google map where I could say, all right, let's see, I could go towards Freetown. I just had to really just use my own intelligence and wits and whatever else survival skills to just stay alive, you know.
And you probably also didn't have time to grieve because you lost your family.
Yes, as the war went on, I lost my mother and father and my 2 brothers that I had mentioned earlier. And this also happened to a lot of other kids in Sierra Leone and generally in the West African, Sierra Leone, Liberian war. There was no time. Also, you know, one of the things that was required to survive this war was the ability to not grieve, you know, to sort of shut down emotionally. Because if you allowed yourself to feel, it weakened your spirit to continue running and you give up, you know, and the war will catch up with you in probably ways you did not want to. So you had to basically continue moving. And another difficult part is that, you know, that I still wrestle with is that you don't know where you cannot bury the dead because you got to continue running for your life. So you don't really have a place where, you know, most people have that luxury where you know where your grandparents or your parents are buried. You don't. You've got to keep running for your life. You don't have time for that, you know. Yeah.
And then also the day came you were snatched into the army.
Yes, I had been, you know, since I had lost my family, I was very angry. And I was with a group of kids who had a similar fate. So we just were basically aimlessly running around. But we decided that we would go to the military base. At this point, the Sierra Leone army had splintered in so many. The command structure had broken down. So basically different squads were all over the country doing whatever they wanted to do. We went to one. Naturally, we thought, hey, if you go to the government army base, you will be safe. So we went there thinking that this could be where we go, and maybe we can walk in the kitchen, which we did, to help cook for the soldiers. And then they decided one day that if you wanted to be on this base, you have to fight. They have to train you. And if you can't do that, then you have to leave. Now, that sounded like a choice, but actually it wasn't. People who tried to leave were shot. So you couldn't leave. So the choice was not really a choice. And at this point, I was 13. And I found myself being trained to fight as a soldier in the midst of war. I could hear the war. I could see the soldiers being brought that had been shot to the base to die there because, you know, we didn't really have the right medical skills to take care of anybody. And I started down that path as a soldier, as a child soldier.
Losing your family, one might think that the army became your second family. Being a 13 years old child.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the techniques that the armies and the rebel groups use. That's why they deliberately target communities and either have children commit violence in their communities or decimate communities so that the children have nowhere to go. And children naturally will seek a community. They want to belong to something, so there's a sense of order. So they pretended to be that order, and because you had lost everything, you believed it. So I believed that my army became my new family, and the commanders were the father figures, the older soldiers were the brothers, and so we looked up to them and wanted to be like them. But this new family was strange in the sense that violence was the currency, was the love. Love was violence. The more violence you committed, the more you did whatever they told you. You rose through the ranks, you were well loved. You had slightly better meal than the next soldiers. So then everybody wanted to aspire to do that, you know. So there was the beginning. There was also a rhetoric of revenge. Because you had lost everything, they told you, the other guys are responsible for what happened to you. And so, and in order to make sure that this doesn't happen to other children, or you want somebody to be responsible, we've got to find them and kill them. And basically you believe that because you were angry, you wanted somebody to be responsible. And then when you engage in the war, you see things or you do things that traumatize you, and then they give you drugs so you can cope with it, and then you get addicted to the drugs. So it was a whole cycle. It's very deliberately done to make you part of who they are, you know. And at this point in particular, I will speak for myself, I had lost hope in my life. I didn't think it was possible I ever come out of this, so I didn't really care whether I lived or died, which makes you a really good soldier because you don't care for your life. So you do whatever they ask you to do. Yeah.
There's something painfully brutal that you said in one of the interviews. Children are cheap. They just need a gun, some shorts, you give them drugs, you don't have to pay them. They are the most lethal weapon.
Absolutely. I mean, like, again, the commanders know very well what they're doing. This is not a mistake. It's not that they wake up one morning and they realize, oh, we took this town and there are children there. They deliberately come to town, they shoot up a few people to make everybody scared for money, and they take the children, the young girls, the young boys, the women, because this is their pool of recruitment. Now, a child who had lost hope, who had lost everything, when you recruit a child, as I said, you know, if you are waging a war and you have your ideology and you try to recruit adults, they will say, well, what is my stake in it? Maybe I be the next minister if I overthrow the guy. Kids don't have that demand. They just want to belong to something. You don't even have to buy them uniforms. Some of us had flip-flops. You can see on this book, this is how mostly some of us were dressed. And if you're lucky, you had a combat pants, but you had flip-flops, and basically you had a gun and the ammunition, and you will go for it, you know? So children are very cheap, and they're also expendable. If they die, you find another one. Particularly in a place like my country, where the majority of the population was under 18. So there's a big pool of... So our task was also to find other soldiers as we wage this war, and that's why they come after you. That's why they, and then, you know, you believe. Also, children at that age, you're still forming yourself. So whatever your environment is, whatever you're told, whatever that belief is what you will buy into. So you come to believe whatever your commanders are telling you as the gospel truth, and you kind of follow it, you know, because this becomes your new family. You know.
And you want to please the elders.
You want to please your elders in this family who are the commanders, but also the children who you've ran with, who you've joined this war with, becomes your brothers and sisters. And there's also an affinity to protect each other. So you do whatever you can to make sure that you stay alive, because you only have yourselves. So that basically was my life, you know, for a number of years.
Luckily, you were saved, thanks to UNICEF and organizations like UNICEF. And you went through the rehabilitation. What was or I can imagine that it was really hard to get rid of the anger.
Yes, it was. You know, first of all, you know, just to explain a little bit, you know, now I do the work with UNICEF. They're called child protection officers, who basically they have UNICEF. It's the only organization that actually does this, goes and negotiate with warlords to release the children from armed groups, because most of these guys have political ambitions. So in order for you to be taken seriously, they will tell you need to start abiding by certain human rights, not violating. So to show that, you have to start giving away children and disband your group. So these guys are not just giving children to UNICEF because they're really nice guys. They are not. They have their own agenda. So in my case, one of those child protection officers had come back and forth probably before I came to this particular base, and so I was disarmed and given to them to put through the rehabilitation process, which is also what UNICEF sets up. With the right funding and everything, they set it up, because if you go and take children out, you have nowhere for them to go. Imagine we're soldiers, so we're very deadly. If you don't have a program for us, we would probably get really mad. So they have to set up the structure. So I went through that structure, went to a rehabilitation center, and when you're running from war, you don't have time to think about anything because you're trying to survive. You know, you don't have time to sit down and say, let's talk about the fact that we just had an ambush. Let's discuss what that means to us. Nobody does that in war. It's only in Hollywood films that they do that. But, so when you remove from the war and you're at a rehabilitation center, is when everything starts to take hold of you. You start to remember everything and you're angry, but you don't know what to do with your anger. You don't know who to put your anger towards. And so sometimes we were putting our anger towards the people who were supposed to help us. At the rehabilitation center, for example, I am really so grateful for some of the staff who work for UNICEF at this particular center that I was in, and other centers that I've been to now around the world to visit. But our center, we would chase the staff and we would heavily beat them up and wound some of them. And the next day, some would come back with a bandaged foot or arm. And so we used to talk among each other that these people are more traumatized than we were. Why are they coming back? No, but we wouldn't come back if somebody was trying to kill us. I were trying to help them, but they would come back and they would say, "Hey, how are you guys doing today?" We just thought I said, these people are really crazy. Something is off with them. We should find out what it is. But they were really, and so that's what started getting us to change a little bit. But it was really hard to deal with all the memories and to be able to recover. But they also have psychosocial help. They have psychologists who then help you to get through that. Yeah.
Now you live in New York.
Actually, I moved to Los Angeles.
You moved to Los Angeles?
Yes. I was looking for the sun. It's too cold in New York.
Maybe your next move will be Slovenia. You have a flourishing rap career here.
I
Just
know.
to remind you.
If he takes me under his wing, I can be his second man, And I could do some tiling as well, Yeah, okay. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, back to my question. Now you live in New York. Los Angeles. I went too far. I went too far back. Los Angeles. Some of your friends, fighter friends, weren't so lucky. Some went through rehabilitation and then straight back to the fields. What made the difference?
Well, I mean, several things made the difference. I think, first of all, the time that I went through rehabilitation was a time when, at least the UNICEF that was in Sierra Leone at the time, had a lot of funding to really have the program continue longer. So each child that came through that program was individually looked at in terms of how they recovered and how they did the family tracing. So I spent 6 months at a rehabilitation center really to recover. That is extremely lucky. In most places, the funding is so short that the timeline is so short because you want the kids to go back to the communities quicker that you kind of have to rush it a little bit. So I was lucky in that sense. Secondly, because when I was at this center, an opportunity came to go to New York to speak at the General Assembly about this study that Grasa Machel had done about the impact of armed conflict on children. And I had a passport because I had to travel. Now, some people may not understand that where I come from, at that time particularly, this was a luxury item, and it still is for a lot of people to get a passport. So because I had this passport, and I traveled to New York, I also met this woman who UNICEF had hired as a facilitator, who became really close friends. And I went back to Sierra Leone when the war reached the capital city, and basically destroyed everything that had been created through these organizations. People were being thrown into the ranks again. But because I had this passport, I could move slightly faster than some people. So I went through Guinea, went to Côte d'Ivoire, and I was going everywhere, all the way to South Africa, and eventually I was able to come to New York and live with this woman who became my mother, who basically adopted me. And because of these circumstances, I was able to perhaps be in a place where I could have time to rest and remake myself in a little bit. But that being said, that's not that some people who stayed behind didn't. I know a lot of people who stayed behind in Sierra Leone who still prospered. Maybe not as quickly as I did, but they went on to finish university, become professors. Some of them started businesses. So a good number of people. I think the reason why I'm the one who's out there, people know about me more because I'm one of the few who decided to speak about my experience as a way to show the possibility to recover. Most of my friends don't want to talk about it at all. That's their own way of recovering. And so that's the reason why I'm the one that you see more than the others.
That was actually my other question. You went back to Sierra Leone. You met with some people who knew the war, lived through the war. Was there any reminiscing about the war, what have happened, or?
Yeah, I mean, my group of friends that I survived the war with or was at a rehabilitation center with, we've become sort of a family. Some are abroad. There are some living in Australia, in Canada, the UK, and a lot in Sierra Leone. So from time to time, we all will get together, and we will discuss. You know, we have a very dark sense of humor, things that most people may not find funny. We will find funny because we had seen certain things. But also what had happened, really, I think what is more crucial about our relationship is that over the years, we've become each other's support. Because there were moments in all our lives where some of us could have gone off the rails a little bit. So, but we were responsible for checking each other. I'll give you an example. We had one of our friends, his younger brother, who was also in war, had a full scholarship that we recommended him for at a university in the US. And he came and he started going to school. And he started becoming one of those people who sort of sees an opportunity that people feel sorry for him because he has lived this thing and wanted to take an advantage of it in the negative way. He wanted just to be like, oh yeah, I was a child soldier, child, and you know, so people, and then he wasn't studying, he was failing his class. So basically, a bunch of us got together and went to visit him. Let's just say when we left, his grades went up, and he did well because we told him, you can't do this. And he cannot say to us that, oh, you don't know what I've been through, because we've been through what he's been through. So it was like, what's your excuse? You know. So other people would tell him, be like, oh, but you haven't been through war. So that's what he was telling everybody. He was saying to him, if we have to come back here, we know how to do certain things. Don't make us go there. Basically, he changed. So basically, we help each other like that. We can set each other straight. If certain things are getting to people's head, we can be like, please, man, don't be like that, because the story is bigger than all of us. And how we survive and how people see us,
How do you survive? Because now you're a fountain of ideas, positive aspect of life. How do you find the strength in you?
Well, I think it requires people coming into your life. Throughout the different times of my life intersected with people through UNICEF and otherwise who changed the course of my life. So this is what I learned something along the way, that a human being's life changes when another human being decides to use their life, not for themselves, but somebody else. It shifts somebody else's trajectory completely. And that's what happened. But also because I think I realized something when I came from the war. When I was a kid, my father used to say something to me that carried me through the war, and even to this day, that when you're alive, there is a possibility that something good would happen to you. If you have no such luck, you will die. You will not be alive. So you have to look for that moment. So I decided to look at my life. I had come through so much trauma. And I thought to myself, if I just look at it as a burden, it will kill me. I've seen too many horrible things. If I just look at it and just become very sorrowful. For example, if I was to come here, even my mood, right? I really deliberately sat and thought about this. If I were to come into a room and I say to you guys, hi, everybody, my name is Ishmael Beahom. I used to be a child soldier. You will all be depressed, But it already happened. There's nothing I can do about it. So if I can be like, I used to be a child soldier, but I put through it, and I make some jokes, humor is medicine, then you're going to see the story. It's going to touch you, but you're also going to realize how the human spirit is resilient to move through these things. So I started thinking about my life. Okay, everything that happened in the war is terrible. I don't want anybody to go through war. But what is it that I learned in those experiences that has strengthened who I am? And I started to refocus some of those things. For example, being a soldier requires discipline, even in the most horrible situation that we were in, even as a kid. If they tell you, stand there and guard this place, you will stand there for 24 hours, you would not move, you make sure nobody breaks that line. Because if it does, it will cost you your life. So, what do I do with that training, with those muscle memory? I decided I will go to the library and I will sit and decide I'm not going to move until I read 2 books. And I won't move. My leg will fall asleep, I will not go get water, and I'll apply that discipline, but now to acquire knowledge. So you see the difference. I also had insomnia. And most people would say to me, oh, go see a doctor, get medical treatment. I was like, no. I'm a university student. I have insomnia, which meant that I only slept 2 hours, and I was okay. I had no medical issues. I'm like, who wouldn't want that? I had spent more of my 24 hours studying, but I could also go and party and come back. I was even a DJ. I was a DJ at parties, and I would go back and study some more. So I was like, this is great. I'm having more time alive, while other people are sleeping. So, and my family would laugh, and I'd be like, but this is serious. So I refocused things. Even as a writer, being a soldier, I learned to observe people deeply. So I use that as a writer. If I want to build character of somebody walking downtown Ljubljani, I can sit somewhere and observe them. They would not know that I'm there because I'll do it in a way that's not intrusive, and I'll learn their mannerisms, and I'll write about it very well. So I refocused everything that seemed like a problem to become a strength for me. And that's how I was able to survive. And then I started also to learn how to deal with those memories so that they don't come up in different ways, So, yeah.
I know people there are anxiously waiting to pose some questions. I can see them. I know who you are. No, I don't, but okay. I was applying some tactics learned before, I don't know. Are there any questions? I'm sure there are. Now everybody's afraid of you, you see? You won't have to rap or anything. Yeah. Maybe just wait for a microphone, because we are going live to Facebook.
Hi.
Or somewhere.
So for how long were you in the army or as a soldier there?
I started when I was about 13 years old, and I was in the war nearly 3 years, so almost 3 years. So, and those were really long years because every day was basically fraught with a lot of violence, and yeah. But yeah. It's back there.
Back there. Way back.
Yeah, we have radio show here, hearing only voices. You don't have children, I guess?
I do, actually.
Ah, you do. Yes. So, can you compare your childhood in Africa and now childhood of your child in Los Angeles? I mean, it's completely different way of life.
Yes.
And how can you give this African soul to your child in Los Angeles?
This is actually yesterday, Thomas and some staff from UNICEF were having this discussion yesterday. My wife also was working for UNICEF as a child protection specialist, actually. She's one of the people who go in to negotiate the release of children from armed groups. So because of her job, we moved around a lot. But also we deliberately decided once we had our first child, who was born in New York, that we didn't want our formative years of our children to be in the United States. No offense to the US. That we wanted them to understand another way of life, not even in Europe. So when our first child was about 6 weeks old, we moved out of the US like that. And we went and lived in Sierra Leone a little bit. We went to the Pacific, to New Caledonia. So just to give a different reality. And then we moved to Mauritania. So my daughter actually grew up in Mauritania until she was about 3 years old, and then spent some time in Senegal. So she actually never lived in the US until recently. And our twins, when they were born in Los Angeles, we came to the US from Mauritania to give birth to them. And then we went back to, we went to live in Sierra Leone, and then we went to live in Nigeria. So they haven't actually lived in the US. This is the first time we're trying it. But still, we are a bit, particularly now, we are a bit, when you have children, obviously, I don't want them to have the life that I had. It was tough. But I want them to understand that there are different ways of living, not the Western way. That there are different value systems. They can have the best of all those worlds. So that being said, now we live in the US, for example, and I was telling Thomas that one of the things that worries me is that my children are becoming really soft by living in the West. I'm really serious about this because in the school systems that my daughter is in, when she started coming home every day, and the teachers would tell her every day that she was special, every day. And I had a problem with that, and I have a problem with that, because no human being can be special every day. It is not possible. You know, it's an illusion, and people buy into it, and then it hurts them emotionally after. So so my wife and I always have this discussion. So we told the teachers, don't tell them they're special. Some days, people are just not good. And some days they are good. We are people who are full of nuances. We are not one trajectory. Because there's this idea of perfection that the world tries to spill at people. Most things that have been created came from failure. You fail and you try again. Kids need to know that they can fail, and it's okay to fail. And so we're trying to teach her that lesson. So sometimes we don't let her go to certain things, because we still want her. And also every summer or every break they get, we try to take them outside of that environment and take them somewhere completely new, where they get to have power failure, so they know that electricity is not a given. So I remember even at some point when we had come back to the US, my daughter was sleeping and I turned the light off and said, good night. And she says, well, Papa, did the light go off? And I was like, no, here the light doesn't go off, but you can turn it off. So when she's in school, kids are brushing their teeth. Kids are playing with the water tap. She says, but in some places people don't have access to water. And they're looking at her like, who is this strange child? But I like that because she has access to different realities. So it's a struggle, though, to do that. So we're in the US for now. I'm not sure how long that would last. Slovenia seems like a nice place to raise
Always
children,
welcome.
But I was sitting yesterday, it also looks so nice. Everybody is outside all the time, having a glass of something during work day,
What more can you ask for?
I thought, what more can you ask for? Your kids can run around and you can have a glass of something. I don't know. It's very nice, so I may look into it.
We can arrange something, I don't know. Another question.
Ishmael, first of all, thanks for coming in the name of Slovenian UNICEF. I'm chairing currently. But now we have Ishmael as ambassador of UNICEF, and I would like to ask you, what would be your idea for us? How to live, what to work, in order to make a better world for, let's say, at least the children that we are raising currently, and to leave them our world too.
Yeah. Well, I think, I've been quite impressed with the staff at UNICEF Slovenia and all the people who are supporting it. You guys are doing some really amazing work. For example, yesterday I saw something that really blew my mind, which is the safe point, like the parliament is a safe point where children can go if they are having trouble, and there are actually people trained to receive them. And I was making the joke that I come from a country and I've been around the world. Most parliaments are not safe points for anybody. Nobody wants to go there. So I was already blown away by that. So I think you guys have a value system and a culture that we do hope more people can join on board to do whatever they can in their capacity to give access to young people, so that young people all over the world that are having difficulty starting an early start in their life can have a better start. Build themselves up so that they can become active members of the human society. I am a proof of when you raise good funds, when you support good programs, somebody like me comes out of that situation. Become an international best-selling author and not a warlord. I could have gone either way, It's serious, it's true. So I don't want you to take lightly your impact. I'm a direct coming from your impact. When you give money, when you support this organization, this is what happens. Seriously, if my life hadn't been intersected with this organization and I hadn't come through, I probably could have gone on to be one of the warlords that the ICC is looking for now. But yet I went on to become a great writer. So I think it's money well spent. I believe, you know. So keep supporting in whatever capacity you can, but also talks among other people who may not share similar views to understand, you know, that the world, we need each other. The world is off balance in so many ways, and the only way we can repair it is to recognize each other's humanity by helping those who are less fortunate than we are, to recreate that, to create that balance differently again. And I strongly believe that because I've come out of it. So, yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm not a rapper, I'm actually a guest, so I will ask you a question. Is there something, you seem a really positive guy, even though you went through things that you talk and we cannot imagine, but is there anything in this world that makes you cry or makes you stop believing in positive vibrations a whole day or something? Is there, because we are really sad sometimes because of the stuff that it's not important. Yeah. What makes you sad? What makes you cry?
It was a long time before I could cry, and I think one of the first times that I really cried was out of joy for a long time, and then after that there are moments of sadness. But one of the things that made me cry for the first time really was when my first child was born. You know, when my daughter was born, and I held her. I was the first person to hold her, and I think I cried out of joy, but also out of fear of the kind of world she was coming into that I was very well aware of, but also of my own worry that I don't want to give her my eyes to see the world, because that's my experience. And I think it's very easy as parents to pass on your trauma to your children because you want to protect them fiercely. And you end up telling them how they should look at the world instead of allowing them to be naive and make their own mistakes and learn from them. So that's one of the things that really, it makes me heavy-hearted when I think about it. Another thing is that when I travel, you know, in my capacity as UNICEF ambassador, one of the things that I do, besides talking to politicians in New York and other places, who are the most difficult people to talk to, even more than warlords, politicians are more difficult. Because at least warlords, you know who they are, you know what their agenda is. Politicians, you don't know what they're thinking. You tell them something really deep and meaningful, and you have no reaction from them. So you're like, well, thank you for coming to see us. Like, all right, you know, we'll be back tomorrow. But when I go to these war zones, I mentioned earlier, I will go with child protection officers in various countries, Central African Republic, Congo, and all over the world, really, to Colombia, to release children from armed groups. And one of the moments that always really makes me very emotional is when I meet kids that remind me of how my life used to be. Right there, holding weapons. And I talk to them, I can feel their brilliance, but they can see it, just like I didn't see mine. And it really makes me upset that that still exists. And when some of them come out and they begin to open up, you know, it's really amazing. So I have all these little brothers and sisters all over the world, because this is my weakness. I'm very, you know, it gets me really emotional when I go in these environments, you know. And then I have to come back to an environment, somebody mentioned the question earlier, to a place like LA, where there's this sort of opulence of living, you know. And I always need a few days to regroup myself so that I'm not upset at everything I see, you know, because then people complain, you know, and be like, I drive faster, I need to get somewhere. And be like, really? There are other things that are more important in the world. But that's their life anyway.
I can imagine there's a lot more questions, and I guess there will be some time to talk to you after this. And thank you, Ishmael, for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for rapping with Six-Pack. Thank you, UNICEF. Thank you all for coming. Now it's time for Six-Pack to do another one. How do you call it? Do another one. To do another one. Another song. To do another one. And then we will take some time to speak to our guests also in the black backstage room or something.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and particularly all of you are already familiar with UNICEF and supporting us. Thank you for the wonderful work that you've done over the years, and please continue. And for some of you who are new, there are people here from UNICEF, and you can talk to me after if you want to know how you can get involved some more. So, but again, thank you for welcoming me to Slovenia, and thank you. I consider you my brother. Yeah. Hopefully,
Your older brother.
If I decide to move to Slovenia, the US is not going so well, so maybe we'll be neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tudi jaz se zahvaljujem UNICEF-u za povabilo. Pa mogoče, I will speak in English, so I'm also thankful and grateful that I'm here. I like this tile oven. It's really nice. It's a nice place. I like the way he makes positive vibrations, energy out of all these bad stories. And I was talking to my friend, and I think 1 year ago, he told me, "Why don't you make a new song?" And I was like, "I don't know. The times are strange." And he said, "I know why. Because you don't have no problems in your life." And I actually believe that we need to fall down, to have some negative things in our life, to express ourselves the best way. That's why this song, "En lep dan," was actually the song I made when my father passed, and it was like 10th most played songs on the radio. So I guess I'm too happy now. I have a small daughter with me here, and maybe I will make a song in a few years when something happens. But now I'm okay. So I'm really grateful to have the pleasure to rap with you, and I wish you all well too. And I have a book for autogram. Remind me later, don't forget. So this next song is about tile laying. That's all I have to say. And I need you on the chorus. It goes la la la. Oh, 7:15 še ni bilo taka žura, dame in gospodje. Hej! Ena pesmica o keramičarskem lepilu. Vsi ste ga že videli, ne, če ne druga. Pri mojstru, ko je bil pri vas doma. Hej, hej! Pa za drugič vedete, tisti, ki boste kaj polagali. Čeki, jav, naj povem vam eno zgodbo izpred parih let. Šel polagati s njeni stranki keramiko in granito gres. Hejo, Versace, keramiko je nabavil za po steni in po tleh.
Stari 500 € za kvadrat, majke.
Men pa roke so se tresle, ko odprl sem prvi paket. Res, majke mi. Ker res me ne moti, če kdo ima denar, a če špara na lepilu, snezen priznam, ahaha. Se veste, kaj govorim, ne? Ja, čeki, jav. Šta se mora, sam pri sebi sem rekel. In s poceni lepilom keramiko na zid prlepo. Zafugiral sem omulo, spucal, da se je svetlo. In pa stranke rekel, ne me klicaj, če vse skup se bo odleplo. Ne pomeni, okej? Ker res me ne moti, če kdo ima denar, a če špara na lepilu, snezen priznam, ahaha. Zdaj pa najbolj pomemben del. To ste vi, prej sem vas naučil. Gremo vsi, ej! La la la. So you had a click to learn. La la la. La 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 la. Hey. La. You're translating him, huh? Okay, prevajaš? Dobar, cool. Hej, res me ne moti, če kdo ima denar, a če špara na lepilu, snijezom priznam, ahaha. Ok, čakaj. Podobno je pri nas, v naši muziki. Bendi špilamo za stonj, si okona so plačani. Pa navadi je tak, Lokal je poln lepih ljudi, pijača je v akciji, vse je lepo, vse je fajn, ko pa prime mikrofon iz zvočnika za piskami. Valjda, ker res me ne moti, če kdo ima denar, a če špara na ozvočenju, sem jezen priznam. Ahaha, dajmo za našega DJ-ja še en aplauz, danes je bil z nami našega tehnika Alkija. Hej, 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 la, 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 gremo vsi. La, 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 co bomo videli? La, 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 la. Vi znate to boš, kaj jaz? La, 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 jaz bluzim, res me ne moti, če kdo ima denar, a če špara na ozvočenju, jaz sem priznam. Zdaj pa na glas, koliko se da, prva, druga, tretja, četrta, deseta vrsta, 3, 2, 1. Še malo na glas. Ajde, gledamo še. Bravo. Jaz bluzim, res me ne moti, če koma denar, a če špara na lepilu, snije sem priznam. Dame in gospodje, z vami je bil number one keramičar med reperi, number one reper med keramičari, Sekumadyjem Čukur. Veliko čast in veselje, hvala za povabilo, hvala Ishmael, Seku, super ste bili, taka žura še ni bilo, 7 pa 15, res. Bi rekel, dajte še enkrat, ampak ne bom vas matril, tako da, naj se druženje prične, hvala lepa.